My name is Zarek of the Vokari, born to the red-mooned plains of Elvarin, bred for military command and diplomatic negotiation. Like all of my kind, I was taught that conflict is a natural extension of ambition and that peace must be enforced through strength. So when I was selected for a cultural exchange with the humans of Sol, I expected cold militarists or calculating strategists. What I found was bizarre. The human vessel Yuian Aurora looked capable enough, sleek, armed, and outfitted with the latest Concord tech. Yet the crew? They laughed too easily, smiled too much. Even the commanding officer, Captain Leona Ramirez, would stop to ruffle a junior officer's hair or exchange banter in the halls. Their readiness drills were sharp, but almost theatrical, as if conflict were just a training simulation, not an eventuality. Peace through presence, they called it. They were polite to a fault, always asking how I was adjusting, always explaining their customs. They insisted I take breaks for something called coffee, and no one batted an eye when I asked for raw nutritional paste instead. One ensign even knitted me a scarf in Vokari colors. I didn't know what to do with it, still don't, but what struck me most was how seriously they took diplomacy. On our fourth week, we arrived near the Mertan Divide, a border region constantly flaring with minor skirmishes. Tensions had spiked again. Two smaller species, the Tirak Coalition and the Shul Enclave, were days away from all-out war. The humans didn't posture. They didn't even raise shields. Instead, they beamed down medical supplies to both sides. They brokered a ceasefire through shared relief convoys and offered translators, negotiators, and neutral space for talks. By the end of the week, the ceasefire held. They hadn't fired a single shot. I remember watching Captain Ramirez return from one of the Tirak War Council meetings, exhausted but beaming. I couldn't help asking, why go to such lengths for people who would rather see you gone? Her smile never faded. Because if we don't, no one else will. She walked away before I could reply. Other species viewed the humans as soft, naive, too eager to forgive, too slow to punish. The Dramathide diplomat whom I met in the Concord Hall months earlier had sneered when I told him of my assignment. The apologists of Sol, he'd scoffed. Give them a century, they'll be Concord janitors, not leaders. I thought he might be right, until Lisa 9. We received the distress call while patrolling the edge of the Darlith Expanse near a fringe colony. Pirates had descended on the settlement with brutal efficiency. The Skarnclade, a nomadic group known for raiding, had breached the colony's limited defenses. The call was brief, chaotic, and filled with screams. The Aurora moved, without hesitation. I expected immediate battle formations, weapons hot, threats broadcast. Instead, Captain Ramirez ordered civilian extraction protocols. The crew scrambled, not to arm torpedoes, but to evacuate the defenseless. Dropships descended under heavy fire, but none returned fire unless absolutely necessary, and even then, with non-lethal stun ordnance. What are you doing? I asked Commander Lee, the second in command. The pirates are butchers. You know what they'll do. His eyes were calm. We know, but first we protect life. Justice comes later. I was stunned. One drop pilot, Lieutenant Sandoval, took 3 wounds dragging colonists from burning shelters. Another medic, Ensign Jules, ran into an active blast zone to pull a crying child from under rubble. By the time the pirates realized the humans weren't going to fight, half the civilians were gone. Then the offer came. Captain Ramirez opened a channel and calmly stated, "To the leaders of the Skarnclade, you have what you came for. We will not retaliate today. If you release the remaining colonists, we will let you leave in peace. If you continue, we will remember." I stared at her, trying to understand the strategy. There was no bluff, no posturing, just a statement, cold, clear. The pirates didn't respond. They torched what remained of the colony and vanished into warp space. The Aurora picked up the pieces. Traumatized civilians, burning infrastructure, ruined hope. Still, there was no counterattack, no pursuit. Captain Ramirez simply said, "Log it, and move on." Back aboard, I confronted her in the observation deck. "You let them go," I said. "You had the power. Why didn't you use it?" She stared out into the stars for a long time before replying. "Because if we strike now, we become like them. Because revenge is easy, restraint is harder. And because one day," she paused, "one day they'll learn what it means when we do decide to strike." That moment stayed with me. It still does. The following days passed in grim silence. The Aurora's mood changed, laughter faded, training intensified. Casual chatter was replaced with quiet preparation, yet there was no rage, no anger, just a heavy stillness, like the deep quiet before a solar storm. At night I wandered the ship's halls and watched the humans work. Their hands were steady. Their voices even. They didn't scream for vengeance or curse their enemies. They planned, they cataloged. They recorded names. They remembered. On the final day of my assignment, Captain Ramirez handed me a data crystal. "For your people," she said. "Proof that peace isn't weakness. It's patience." I left the Aurora with more questions than answers. The Dramathi diplomat's words echoed in my mind, but they felt wrong now. These weren't apologists. They weren't weak. They were watching. They were waiting. And something told me they wouldn't wait forever. That was the day I stopped believing the myth of the gentle Terran and started fearing the truth of the patient killers of soul. I had thought I understood the humans. After 3 months aboard the UEN Aurora, I believed I had seen the measure of their soul. Brave, idealistic, annoyingly diplomatic. A species clinging to compassion in a galaxy that rewarded ruthlessness. I still remember Captain Ramirez's words. "Restraint is harder." I believed her. But I was unprepared for Lisa 9. It was supposed to be just another colony. A small outpost of scientists, farmers, and families nestled on the edge of conquered space. Peaceful, unarmed. Typical of Sol's expansion strategy. Quiet cultivation, not conquest. Then came the Gorvath Syndicate. Unlike the opportunistic Skarn pirates, the Gorvath were different. A cartel masquerading as a government. Their fleets were cobbled together from stolen tech and slave labor. Their leadership, a rotating circle of warlords and crime barons. They had long despised Sol's influence in the outer sectors. Too much order, too much law. Sol's diplomatic missions disrupted their trade, starved their smuggling routes. So, they made an example of Lisa 9. The attack wasn't a strike, it was an execution. They jammed comms, disabled the orbital satellites, and landed 28 dropships armed with heavy weapons and chemical suppressants. What followed wasn't a battle. It was butchery. They murdered scientists in their labs, executed teachers in front of classrooms, burned families alive in their shelters. They didn't just kill, they broadcast it. Across conquered space, screens flickered to life with scenes from Lisa 9. Crying children dragged through the streets, settlers impaled on spires of iron, burning, banners of Sol beneath bloodied boots. The Gorvath leader, an oaf of a being named Krolvesh, gave a speech drenched in mockery. "The humans call themselves protectors. I call them cowards. Let this colony burn as a message to Sol. Stay out of our way." The galaxy recoiled. Even species that despise Sol were stunned by the savagery. The conquered High Council convened within hours, issuing a formal condemnation. They used words like unthinkable and heinous, but ended with a plea for de-escalation. No sanctions, no military action, just another plea for restraint. Sol's response? Silence. No broadcast. No demands. Not even a statement. The humans shut down their diplomatic channels. Their embassies across conquered space closed their doors. The stars around Earth went dark. I was still on the Aurora when the news hit. The usual hum of conversation died instantly. Faces that once beamed with curiosity and warmth became masks of granite. The recreational decks were emptied. The laughter that once echoed through the ship's halls never returned, and the training began. Not just drills, simulations, war games, tactical rehearsals. Every day. No explanation, no announcement. They just started. The mess halls served food in silence. Music disappeared. The chaplain's services became more frequent, but quieter. The ship's AI reduced ambient lighting and diverted processing power to encrypted subroutines I couldn't access. Even the cleaning bots moved with more urgency. It was as if the ship itself was preparing to grieve or to strike. After a week of watching the humans operate like ghosts, I approached Lieutenant Han, a quiet officer from Earth's northern territories. She was loading data into a combat analysis console, expression blank. I hesitated before asking, "What are you planning?" She didn't even look at me. "Nothing," she said, then paused. "Yet." I felt my spine stiffen. There was no anger in her voice, just a certainty that chilled my core. The rest of the galaxy, though, saw only human inaction. The Dramathi media ran headlines. Saul whimpers into silence. The peacemakers fold. Gorvath victory proves human weakness. The Gorvath capital aired celebratory parades. Krolvesh released another video, wearing a human uniform he claimed belonged to a murdered Lisa 9 governor. He laughed on screen. Sul does nothing. They are sheep in the clothing of wolves. 3 months passed. No strikes, no fleets, no retaliation. The galaxy moved on. The Concord declared the matter under review and focused on a growing trade dispute near the Calvon Rift. War rumors circulated elsewhere. The spotlight dimmed on Lysa 9, but I stayed aboard the Aurora. I watched. I listened. The humans didn't forget. Every crew member wore a black insignia with 9 stars, a symbol for Lysa 9's 9 sectors. A memorial wall appeared in the aft corridor, filled with names and hollow images of the dead. Flowers were left daily. No one talked about it. No one had to. I accessed human cultural archives late at night. Their history was filled with restraint, but also with long silence before sudden fury. A war from their early history called Pearl Harbor stood out. They had been attacked unprovoked, then turned the tide with force so overwhelming that the aggressors didn't survive the century. The Ingur signs were there. One morning, the ship's AI pinged my private terminal. A file was waiting. Anonymous. The title was just a quote. "Revenge is a dish best served cold." I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of the humans. Not because they were angry, because they were not. No grand speeches, no threats, just a quiet, disciplined preparation. A long breath held in the void. I began to dream of them, not as diplomats, not as peacekeepers, but as something older, deeper. A predator that doesn't roar before it strikes. One that watches, waits, and remembers. The galaxy had mistaken silence for surrender. But on that ship, walking those darkened halls, I knew something was coming, and when it did, no one would be ready. It began without warning. No declarations, no conquered vote, no war drums, just absence. On the 14th day of the 8th cycle, human patrols vanished from the outer sectors. Entire Sol-aligned fleets dissolved into silence. Communications went dark. Outposts logged empty hangars, and long-range sensors caught only flickers of heat trailing into the void. Within hours, speculation ignited. Systems check glitch. Coordinated maintenance. Pullback after the Lisa 9 scandal. But I knew better. We all did. I was on an observation post orbiting Karalak Station, still attached to the Diplomatic Liaison Corps. The humans hadn't formally dismissed me. They didn't need to. They stopped explaining themselves weeks ago. We weren't friends anymore. We were spectators. 3 days into the disappearance, it started. Hour 01, Gorvath World, Vrexa. The orbital defense grid blinked offline. No alerts, no impact readings, no intrusions. Then silence. A routine civilian freighter approached, broadcasting, "For clearance." No reply. It entered orbit. What it found was silence. The entire surface was scorched black. Population centers, vaporized. Military garrisons cratered. Bioscans, zero life. Not a single heartbeat. The crew broadcast a distress signal. Before it reached conquered channels, similar reports arrived from 6 other systems. By hour 72, 14 Gorvath planets had gone completely dark. 4 were capital cities. 2 were major shipyards. All were reduced to silent wreckage, some with entire city blocks neatly carved away as if by surgical fire from orbit. No survivors, no distress beacons, no retaliation, not a single broadcast from Sol. It didn't take long to realize the humans had names for each target. Operation Winter Silence, authorized 3 months prior. Execution, 72 hours. Objective: erase the Gorvath Syndicate from the map. I received the message personally, an encrypted file left in my quarters on Karalak Station. No delivery system, no sender ID. Just a short transmission in a calm human voice. This isn't vengeance, this is balance, and that was all. I scoured the data feeds trying to understand. What weapon could silence 14 systems in under 3 cycles? The Conquered had no answers. By the time the Council organized an emergency session, the Gorvath were gone. Officially, the humans said nothing. But rumors leaked, from whispers aboard, ghost ships, black box logs, and hushed veterans whose eyes never quite met yours afterward. The operations uncovered. Black Ops insertions, small squads in advanced stealth suits, capable of cloaking from all known sensor types, were dropped on key Gorvath installations months before the strike. They mapped defense layouts, recorded leadership schedules, and planted AI-controlled sabotage nodes, AI-driven strike fleets. The main fleets were unmanned. Ghost ships, controlled by neural cores housed deep within Sol space. They moved with eerie precision, beyond what biological crews could ever achieve. They didn't bombard from orbit like a blunt hammer. No, they cut like a scalpel. Power grids first, then comm centers, then air filtration, leaving entire bunkers, full of soldiers choking in silence. Orbital shock drops. When human soldiers did arrive in person, it was via atmospheric skip pods, needles of fire launched from high orbit. They hit the ground and unfolded like insects, releasing armored infantry units known only by their designation. Eidolon Protocol. They didn't linger. No prisoners. No messages. Each one had a kill list, loaded with names pulled from Lisa 9's massacre archives. One by one, those names were erased. I read the reports. I watched the footage leaked by scavengers days later. Black-armored humans walking through fire as if it weren't there, not speaking, not hesitating. One turned to a fleeing Gorvath commander and simply nodded once before leveling a charged railgun through his chest. In every system, the pattern was the same. Targeted infrastructure, instantaneous suppression, zero collateral outside military or leadership zones. Even the planet's atmospheres were left intact. This wasn't war. It was bookkeeping. The galaxy scrambled to respond. The Concord Hall entered emergency session, but by the time they gathered, the Gorvath Syndicate no longer existed. Its leadership was gone, except one. Krull Vesh, the butcher of Lisa 9, had fled weeks before. But humans had already anticipated that. He was captured outside the neutral Varnix belt, hiding under a falsified Dramathai identity. When cornered, he didn't fight. He collapsed to his knees and begged for mercy. He received none, but not from Sul. The humans handed him over, to the families of Lisa 9, not to courts, not to Conquered, to them. The trial was public. Streamed across every Conquered terminal, Krull Vesh, stripped of his military decorations, was forced to watch the broadcast of his own crimes while survivors from Lisa 9 read names of the dead aloud. For 12 hours they read. No interruption, no music, just names and sobbing. When it was over, Krull Vesh was sentenced, not to death, but to isolation. He was entombed in a deep space cryocell, his mind active, suspended in lucid stasis, programmed to replay the names of Lisa Nine's victims, in random order, for eternity. I tried to speak with Captain Ramirez again, but she never responded. The Aurora had moved on, stationed deep in Sol space away from prying eyes. I did, however, receive a final transmission, a text file, no encryption. It read, "We asked for peace. We offered restraint. You called it weakness, so now we show you what restraint was holding back." I resigned my post the next day, not in protest, not in anger, in understanding. I had come to learn about humans, to document their culture, to serve as a liaison between our people. I thought I was observing idealists, gentle creatures evolved from tribal warriors into ambassadors of harmony. I was wrong. I wasn't observing diplomats. I was observing predators, not the mindless savagery of the Skarn or the greedy brutality of the Gorvath. No. Humans are patient, calculating. They build bridges first, always offering peace. They give every opportunity for reason. But if you force them to take the other path, if you make them choose between silence and justice, they will choose silence, but not forever. And when they finally act, it won't be loud. It won't be messy. It will be exact. As I filed my last report for the Vocari Ministry of Interstellar Relations, I chose to end with a quote I'd seen carved into the memorial wall aboard the Aurora. No attribution, no author, just words. We thought they were peaceful. We were wrong. They were just patient.